Welcome to the Husk Guys Podcast. Oh, yeah!
What's up, everybody? It is Tuesday, November 12th. It's game week, USC week. And we are back. We're back on the saddle, all the way back on Seattle. We got Dana Mania is taking over Husker Nation. I am here tonight. It's David here with my brother Andrew. As per usual, we're gonna flip the vibes. Maybe we got some venting and some vibe flipping to do, but yeah, we're gonna do our best to work through this thing. Before we kick this bad boy off, as always, a quick word from our sponsors. Pipeline-turkey.com. For those who have supported the cause, we greatly appreciate it. Head to pipeline-turkey.com. Every bag that you purchase directly supports the Huskers offensive line and have royalty directly through NIL. So check out pipeline-turkey.com. We've had some cool events going on with those guys. Check out huskguysstore.com. Great merch. We got huge Christmas sales coming up. We're pretty excited to tell you about these things. We got Run the Ball gift boxes. We've got dad gift boxes coming. We've got some golf gift boxes coming. We are going to have gift boxes ready for any Husker fan. So that is for dad, for mom, for kids. We got some super fun stuff coming from the officially licensed Huskers Best of Big Red store coming for you. So check out huskguysstore.com, especially coming up for Christmas time. We got some really good stuff coming for you. Really excited to show it to you guys. And then finally, a word from Underdog Fantasy. We'll start work with this company. Super cool. We got a 50% deposit match. Use promo code HuskGuys at Underdog Fantasy. Andrew and I will be talking to them right at the end of this. I think we'll probably just make up some bets going into it. We've got a pretty good idea of what how Underdog Fantasy feels about Huskers. And check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code HuskGuys. Get a 50% deposit match. So you put $1,000 in, you make $500 instantly. And then you can start betting on the over-unders, the highs and lowers of Dylan Raiola, all the way through the running backs, the wide receivers. They got some good stuff on Fedoni. They got some good stuff on USC. So check it out. Go to Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code HuskGuys. 50% deposit match. I'm here with my brother Andrew. We are about to jump into this thing, and we're going to talk about Dana Mania. But I first want to ask, start off with a question for you, Andrew. What happens if we just win the rest of our games?
No, you've been told so many times on Twitter to not say that.
What if we do?
What if we lose 100% of the games that you tweet that, and it's
we lose 100% of the games. Anyways, it doesn't matter what I say. There's no way I'm directly correlated.
It's worth trying a new strategy here, but the deal is this: if we start putting up anywhere, if we put it this way, half of his career average in points as a head coach or offensive coordinator, half would land you right around low 20s. That would be better than we have been doing against Big Ten competition, and we would already have 2 or 3 more wins. So I'm down. I am so down. I am so jazzed. He's like the one thing that could pump some sunshine and Kool-Aid through the gutters of Lincoln. He is the greatest offensive mind that we've seen in a while. He's a Mike Leach disciple. His offenses have proven it. I'm back in. So I don't want to get too much into detail. Let's see. To answer your question, this is a huge shot in the arm for Husker Nation.
Yeah,
right now.
Biggest question mark we
put
had.
it this way. We've got one of the worst offenses that we have ever had. Literally outside of the top 100 in all the major metrics, including 126th in red zone scoring.
Not great. That's not a good stat.
You bring in a guy that has had multiple different destinations, a top 5 offense in the country. How can you not be excited about that?
But he also has, and this is where I'm sort of fascinated. I'd love to hear somebody who's on the inside. This is completely unprecedented. So for those who have not been paying attention, Nebraska, over the bye week, they brought in Dana Holgorsen, who's a former head coach of West Virginia, as well as the most recent coach of Houston, one of the best offensive minds in the country. And over the bye week, Rule leaks out and says, hey, we're going to get some outside counsel, and they're going to come in and do some advising for us. The next day, he says, hey, Dana Holgorsen's an old friend. He's going to come in and check out the offense, and he's going to help us with some things. Great, right? Like you've got an external, great offensive mind coming in and talking about it.
Yeah.
And then what? Like, I guess that was probably all of last week. And then all of a sudden, his press conference Monday
It
morning,
was like,
yeah.
I think it was only like 2 days.
Was it
like
that soon? I don't even know. Was it that? I feel like because we had the whole bye week last week. I'm like mixing up all the days. That I feel like he at least showed up after the, because I remember like the whole news story last week was him saying we need outside counsel, and you're like, this coaching staff makes $25 million. Why do we need to hire consultants?
Yeah.
But credit to Rule that's broken. He couldn't figure out how to fix it. He brings in Holgorsen, but then today comes out, or yesterday, Monday, comes out in his press conference. It's like, hey, by the way, Dana Holgorsen's calling the plays, and everybody in the room is like, wait, calling the plays isn't what? And he's like, yeah, he's the offensive coordinator. Like, the what? How can you a new offensive coordinator in week 9, week 10, like for the last 3 games of the season? Like, does he even know the plays? Like, what is going on? So that happened this week.
He said it like in his interview too, and if you watch it, like he almost has this like tiny little smirk, like, oh boy, this is gonna rile him up. He like opened his presser with it, and it was just like put it in as like a postscript. He was like, yeah, so Dana's here, and he'll be calling the plays. Any questions? And everyone's like, what? Yes, of course we have questions.
What makes me laugh is like, so Holgorsen shows up, and does he show up to the first practice and he like watches Satterfield as like, yeah, I'm not, I'm like, look at me, it's like that meme. It's like, look at me, I'm the captain now. Like, I'm not dealing with this. Who's this? What is going on? This is the word.
It walks into an OR and then the patient's like bleeding out on the table. And he's like, why don't you just step back for a sec? Let me see what I can fix.
Yeah, like you just see him like walking into practice and like,
no, let's stop the bleeding. Let's and just like just a carotid artery, just like pulsing blood. He's just like, all right, hang on. You step aside.
You should just watch, like, you should just calling like the first play. He shows up, calls the first play, and he's like, Satterfield looks over at Dana's like, watch this one. Screen pass right. And Dana's like, just put the playbook. Put it down.
Give me the keys. Hey, give me the keys. You're drunk.
Matt,
give me the keys.
Coach Rule.
You are not driving today.
Yeah, you just see him looking at Rule like, did he really just call a screen pass right in my face? Like, the first day I'm here. Like, really? We're just calling screen passes? That's what we're doing? You gotta just be like, I'm going to take the keys. Thank you. Yeah, I've been ahead. I mean, it's crazy. It's been a head coach for 10 seasons, 10 plus seasons. Had some of the best offenses in the country. So I mean, I always wonder how these
is like, you could compare this to like almost probably on the level of like Ohio State grabbing Chip Kelly, that level kind of talking. I mean, he was a head coach last year, in 2023.
Well, that's where he got
time off and he took time away and whatever. And then it was just like, he was like consulting on the side and stuff. And like, it didn't go great at the end of his Houston tenure, but like, he's been an offensive mind through and through. And like, for him to just like sign on like this, there's got to at least be something that Holgorsen believes in, which I think the selling point is, you've got the tools here. They just need to be put together. You've got probably the best, like, I'm looking back at his list of quarterbacks, which includes a great list. Case Keenum, Geno Smith, Will Grier, Derek King for a little bit at least. Like, these are some pretty solid talents. You could argue that Raiola's the best raw talent that he's ever had to work with at quarterback. And a coach like that probably sees him and he's like, I can make this guy good.
Absolutely.
I can help him figure it out. And that's been the number one thing probably missing from our offense. Like, I mean, our running game can't get going. But like, you've seen other teams get away with like not a great running game, but an elite passing game. And you've got some tools here right now that in these last couple games, it's not going to be an overnight fix, but you can at least train his eyes a little bit better. You can at least have him completing like these short range, high percentage passes, because that's what his offenses have always been about.
Yes. Andrew Hermes is calling in, says sometimes the answer is right in front of you. We have drop back passer and a struggling run game. Time for the air raid. So here's what's interesting about I had a great time. Like, this is almost like a gift from the gods, because like the vibes are maybe the lowest they've been in Husker Nation like history. Of like, we're just getting crushed on Twitter. Like, people are sick of Kool-Aid. They don't want to do it.
Vibes are in the basement.
But like, coming after the UCLA loss, like, they're I will say, like, UCLA then beat Iowa. So I'm feeling like, all right, it wasn't like a
Yeah,
complete dumpster fire loss,
whatever.
but you drop like this is like truly like an off-season level of like Kool-Aid that you're able to be like, yeah, because in 2016, West Virginia led the nation in passing. Therefore, we will, like there's just that instant like we're going to ignore the fact that he went 4-8 at Houston and got fired, and we're going to focus on 2016 led the nation in passing. That his offense had ranked. He's had, his offense ranked number 1 nationally in total offense in 2010. Yeah, it was 14 years ago. That doesn't matter. We're not going to focus on that either. He's coached 1,000-yard rushers. He's had Kendall Hunter at Oklahoma State. They beat Clemson 70-33 in that Orange Bowl. I mean, just like that, you run through it, and he took Houston from 4-8 to 12-2. Like, and then like you mentioned, Geno Smith, Will Grier, Case Keenum was the all-time leading passer. So like, he's got the pedigree, he's got the track record, he's got NFL talent that he has coached. Record breakers, one of the best, most exciting offenses. That like, can he fix it in a week? I don't know, probably not. But the Satterfield play calling is a disaster. I don't really understand how he's going to come in and like orchestrate a new offense and draw up new schemes. But like, it couldn't be worse. It truly could not get any worse.
No, I think this is a long-term play. I mean, at least for the last 3 games, and then at least with the expectation of next year. Like, I'm sure that's going to be a part of his like contract negotiation and everything here too. And it's an obvious move here as well. Like what was the one thing that everybody kind of had on Satterfield? Probably like his lack of experience, and at least he was okay at South Carolina for like a couple games, but like the inconsistency. When you look back at Holgorsen's track record, like the thing that stands out is just that his system seems to work at each destination that he's been. Case Keenum at Houston, like great example there. Applies it to Geno Smith, applies it to Will Grier. Like it's multiple different. Brandon Weeden. He was like 29 when he was the quarterback or something, but he never figured it out until like that year. And then he took them from the 61st. They were 61st overall in total offense the year before he got there. They were number 1 in the country the year that he was there in 2010. And that's when he took his first head coaching gig at West Virginia. And his first 2 years at West Virginia, he had top 10 offenses as well. And that was as a head coach. So, I mean, it works. I think we've got the parts. I don't think Husker Nation is going to love a lot of the concepts that are there, but I do think that you have to take what is working. And like what has not been working for us is the short passing game, the intermediate passing, like our ability to play like the pitch and catch football that you would think is just like, hey, this is a drop back, like 2-step bang. And Rail he's regressed throughout the year. And so this is the perfect time.
I think to seg into like the roller coaster that you've got highlighted here of like he's lost his mojo, and like this will be something that helps to bring that back, right? Of like you bring in a seasoned play caller who's got half a dozen NFL quarterbacks that he's coached through college, exciting new offense. Like you can just see it in Dylan's eyes. He was not comfortable the entire UCLA game. He struggled against Ohio State. He was not good against Indiana. I mean, that's 3 straight games after really playing flawless in those first 5-6 games. He was incredible. And so like you got to find that mojo back if he's even healthy enough to play. I don't think they've come out and said he's healthy enough to play, so it might be a Harburg show. But I think regardless, like when you have a generational quarterback like him and he just looks deer in the headlights half the time, like UCLA is 14-27 50. I mean, he's gone from consistently being 73 to 77% on the completion spenders last 3 games, 63, 65, 51. So like it's fallen quite a bit. You need a shot.
1 touchdown to 6 interceptions, I think, the last 4 games.
Brutal. But and he's just getting crushed. He's gotten sacked 8 times, 12 times in the last 4 games, 8 times in the last 3 games. I mean, he's just getting absolutely massacred. And that's going to be a thing that's like for him, it's like not that he's running to the transfer portal, but it's like if he keeps getting crushed like this, like how can we got to just protect him better. But I also think, I mean, Rail aside too, there's an element of, I think if you truly come up here and you're like, I still just believe the parts are there. You show up here and you're like, okay, We have the number one quarterback, yeah, but we also have this, Nayor's fantastic, and so is Banks, and so is, we got a 5-star tight end, Fedoni, who can catch. We've got good running backs. We've got the pieces.
Yeah.
It's just like
it was interesting to hear in his presser as well when he said, one thing that has been noticed is that we've been trying to kind of like scheme open the receivers and like, hey, here is your route. Here's like where you need to run. And the whole air raid concept does leave a little bit of like choice and a little bit of a freestyle almost. Like, hey, a little bit more on the receivers here. Like, you go out. If they're pressing up against you, you're running this route. If they're lagging off of you, or they're playing 2 deep or 1 deep, whatever, like it changes your routes a little bit. So I just wonder if the receivers like last game against UCLA, there were some just long developing plays, like Rayola just sitting there. And sometimes he was missing open receivers. He wasn't like in the right place. But other times it was like, how is UCLA covering all 5 people going out for a pass right now? Like every down.
For 6 seconds.
And that lasted the entire first half, some of the third quarter. And you're just like, you gotta be kidding me right now. Like, they're just taking too long. And so I wonder if these choice routes and stuff that they're going to be doing might free receivers up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, we intentionally just skipped over UCLA because I couldn't even that game just snapped me in half. That was like that's straight from the Jim Ross just being like, by God, Nebraska, they're broken in half. Chokeslam to hell. Like, just laying on the ground with like my back lifeless. Like, oh my God. Like, what killed me the most about that game was I hate getting out coached and getting out schemed. And, there's this element of like, it just feels like every game. Indiana had the perfect scheme for us, perfect play calls. Illinois had this flawless offensive game plan to figure out our defense. Like, UCLA had a perfect game plan. Like, we only had 3 plays in the first quarter of that game. Like,
with first year
all of these games with first year head coaches where they just have these flawless game plans against us, and you're like, and then Rule comes out and it's like, when they got a bye week, it totally makes sense that they can out scheme us. I'm like, dude, this is a first year head coach, and we came out of a bye week and we lost 56-7. So like, don't give me the like thing. Like, you study. Like, you got 700 people on your staff. It's like, hopefully, it's like Holgorsen can come in and like make this thing happen, because that game, God, broke me in half. Couldn't get off the carpet on that one.
Oh my God, I needed a mental bye week more than anything. That was just so brutal.
Well, I guess this is where I was like, all right, I was kind of not even trying to circle the drain here, but I was like taking a very objective look at this. Like, Holgorsen's going to fix everything. We have nothing to worry about. Everything's going to be fine. But I was sitting here like 9 games in, like, are we good at anything? Like, what are we good at? I was just looking at like the Big Ten rankings for the year, and Dylan started out way hotter on these things. He was, he's 6th in completions. He's 9th in completion percentage. He's 9th in passing yards. He's 1st in a lot of these stats for freshmen. So you got to factor that in. But 12th in touchdowns, 4th interceptions, 9th in yards. Like, they're just all, he's like 9th and 10th. And this is, just fine. But he was at the top maybe like those first 5-6 games, and then he's kind of sunk down. But even going then to like the next level too, I looked up Huskier stats later. So if you're not watching the live stream, passing yards, Dylan Raiola is 9th in passing yards. Total rushing yards, Dowdell is 17th. So we have the 17th best running back. Obviously, we're splitting the carries everywhere, but like rushing attacks, kind of nothing. And Nayor is 408, leads the team with 408 receiving yards, and he's 27th in the conference. So you're just like, nobody's cracking the top 10
in the conference. That's crazy.
In the conference in anything, and you're like, intuitively you know it because you watch it, and it doesn't matter if you win 14-7. But like, when you're not winning and you don't have stats, and you're like, the whole thing is like nothingness, which is why like Holgorsen is like, all right, it's the shot in the arm, it's a home run hard, it's a slam dunk. Rule made it. He's mature enough to like realize his shortfalls. And he sees the same stuff we see. It's like, this is nothing. It's nothing. It's a nothing offense.
It is a nothing offense. And like the reality of a lot of, like, it's interesting that you see, not to make comparisons that'll make people mad, but Chicago Bears kind of going through a similar type of like regroup process right now, right? So they've taken the number 1 overall pick. They have a generational quarterback, and like things aren't working. Like something is broken.
Yeah.
So they're regrouping. So a lot of the time, I mean, the offensive coordinator is judged on stats, but the stats are all about how your quarterback plays. Like the quarterback performance almost dictates the coordinator's job. And I think Holgorsen comes in and he's like, yeah, I can do pretty good with this guy. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it could be better than this.
Oh, I said the
And
bar is so low.
yeah, with the fact that Satterfield's been it's just been this much of a struggle. It started out promising. I honestly didn't think all of it was Satterfield's fault as well. Like at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, we got some fun tools. We got, we started seeing like the Ja'Cory Barney reverses. We had Dowdall as the power back. We had like Ramir catching passes out of the backfield, against Colorado and stuff. Like we were using our weapons a little bit better. We were hitting deep balls a little bit better. We were playing worse defenses. That probably helped. But the reality is, like, you can't see this level of regression. And then compared to last year's stats when we had a third string quarterback in Harburg there, like our fourth string receivers and stuff, and we have the exact same numbers. Like,
yeah, it's brutal.
this year compared to last.
Well, and I think that's what kills you. Is I would agree. Like and we gave props to him after the Colorado game. We gave props to him after multiple games. So I was like, that was actually, he called a good game. He's calling a fun game. Yeah. Like you're saying, he's got reverses. He's got guys crossing the field. Like he calls some fun stuff.
There's a lot of execution issues, and
yeah,
which again is coaching.
But I think there's
players.
When you start to lose confidence though, and you see it like in Dylan's eyes and you see it in the players' eyes, and like wide receivers are confused and they're in, legal formations and stuff. There's something clearly off. And but the biggest thing to me too, and this is where it becomes unacceptable, is when you got, Kurt Signetti shows up to Indiana and they're 10-0, right? You're like, sure. You're out of excuses to be like, now we're 20 games into this thing and we have no offensive identity, right? Like, or even UCLA, like he's 2-5 and he comes in and blows the doors off you. He's a first-year head coach. He's never coached. He's never coached anything. He's never coached. Yeah, he's never coached anything ever before. Like, you can get a pass for maybe a Bielema or a Lincoln Riley, but like you can't be losing to a first-year UCLA coach who's literally never coached anything ever, and get out-coached by him. And they're like, oh, we got out-coached by Bieniemy. It's like, well, 5 teams figured out how to beat UCLA. So, like, it wasn't exactly like, they aren't exactly a powerhouse. So,
no,
those things.
It was interesting to hear. Just one more thing on Holgorsen and stuff, but it was interesting to hear him say initially after the game, like, hey, what's going on with the offense? And his answer was like a deep sigh. It was like, I don't know. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So you better bring in somebody that does. And he did. So props to him for recognizing, like, his downfalls and stuff a little bit. Also brought in Phil Snow. Got a shout out to Phil Snow, because that was basically a virtual hire, which I understand is like eyes in the sky. But he was a D coordinator with him back in the day. Fun fact I read on Sports Illustrated. Did you know Phil Snow was the D coordinator at Arizona State when they shut out Nebraska in 1996? He was on that defensive staff.
That's a wild one.
That's so random.
I did not
the last time we were ever shut out.
Jake the Snake Plumber. That was a dark day. Dad didn't go to work that entire week. He just like wore a bathrobe and just like slept in the basement all week.
Yeah,
he was like
just eternal depression.
Just said, now we lose every week. What are we doing? Last one on the depression train. But this, I guess, this is like the last stats I'll put up. But yes, basically hammering home the point.
Yeah,
our conference ranks: points per game, we're 12th. Yards per game, 11th. Passing yards a game, 9th. Rushing yards a game, 13th. We're just fine. We'd be last if there was a 12-team conference, but thankfully there's 18, so there's some teams below us. I was surprised on the defense. I think is a weird one, and like the stats don't quite do it justice. Like, opponents' points per game, we're 7th. Total yards per game, we're 13th. Passing yards per game, we're 10th. We're giving up 300 total yards, 200 passing yards, 100 rushing yards a game. But sacks were 4th, So there was some stuff where I was like, yeah, I guess we do sack the quarterback a lot. Tackles for loss, so we have 22 sacks. We have 57 tackles for loss, which is 5th in the conference. Both really good numbers. 9 interceptions. Again, interceptions was one of the biggest focus points coming into the offseason. It's like, how do we get more turnovers? We got 9. That's 4th in the conference. And they've got 2 touchdowns. The 2 pick sixes. So, but the defense is weird because you're just like, that Colorado, Ohio State defense doesn't seem to show up every week for whatever reason. But if they do, and then you have a tiny spark on offense.
The eternal hypothetical.
Yeah.
The reality is just that, like, we have an above average defense, but not elite. I mean, we've seen what happens when they go against great offenses and stuff, or even halfway decent ones. 20 to 30 points has been put up on us several times this year.
But that's what's weird though, because they like I would argue Shadir Sanders is the best quarterback we saw all year, and we shut him down. And then the second best quarterback and the second best offensive team was Ohio State, and we shut them down. Sure. Yeah. And then we get blown up by UCLA. It's like, and Illinois like lights us up like a Christmas tree, and so does Indiana. It's just a very weird
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I mean, the numbers don't totally lie here. Like, we're decent at, we're kind of a bend but don't break at this point. I agree with Andrew Hermes again. Likes Tony White. Thinks he's slow to make some adjustments, almost stubborn. That's probably been like one of his downfalls. I would say against UCLA, I was the second half versus the first half. That was a little bit more promising. They really, I mean, they had the pick 6, but then they think they only put up like one score. That the rest of the game. So, I mean, they a little bit of bend but don't break. We're above average. We're not quite elite. We our offense, if you paired an average offense with an above average defense, it'd be an automatic like 7 and 5. But we've been a very below average offense.
That's crazy. And it's like, even with all these weapons that we've added, it's just, I don't know. You got to figure
it's just
we got
the Big 10 point totals that we have had: 20 against UCLA, 17 against Ohio State, 7 against Indiana, 14 against Rutgers, 28 against Purdue, 24 against Illinois. We have not scored more than 28 points on a Big 10 opponent.
Jesus. That's
so
I mean, even our blowout against Colorado was 28.
Imagine if you did, we'd be close to like.
Well, that's what I mean. Even Colorado was like considered a blowout, and we only had 21 points in that game because we had one pick.
Yeah.
We had a pick 6.
Oh, yeah, 21 offensive points. Yeah.
21 offensive points. So we've never scored more than 3 touchdowns in a game. Man, but imagine if we.
Holgorsen's
that's what's
here.
like.
It's gonna
that's what I keep saying is like truly though, you're just like, you're looking at it and you're like, the pieces are there, the players are there, the quarterback is there. It's there. There's stuff there. And I think that's where like Nebraska fans are just ripping their hair out, because you're like, it's there. It just needs a coach to just like mold it and make something happen and make somebody run wide open. And maybe it's
that's exactly it. Like if you, again, before the season, even now, if you paired 3 very solid receivers with the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country, a 4-star transfer running back, 2 other returning running backs, 3 other returning running backs,
5-star tight end,
a 5-star tight end with an incoming 4-star tight ends to back him up, and an O-line that had like the most returning starts that we've had in quite some time.
It's there
amongst the most returning starts in the Big 10 before the season started. I mean, you would have said, yeah, the pieces are there, the potential is there, and now it's just like it's make or break time, and we better be talking bowl games here pretty soon.
Yeah, it's close. All right, well let's talk. We got to beat USC. We have to. We just have to.
All right, how are we gonna do it? All right, no, I got some good bets.
All right, where do you want to start? You want to start on the UQB?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, you've got a guy making his first the start of significance going into this week. I'm sensing a little bit of bad juju in the USC locker room right now.
Very bad. Very bad.
And this is where I'm at. And I had to slide more towards the end, but you've got a starting quarterback that just left the team, entering the transfer portal, probably going to end up going to Michigan, Miller Moss. He was doing pretty good, a little bit turnover prone, but like they have a top 15 passing offense with him as their starter. Gone. He's out. Jaden Maeva comes in from UNLV. They also got hit with some probation this week. Basically, we're cheating. And then they also find out that their star recruit for next year, Julian Lewis, star quarterback recruit coming in, is taking official visits elsewhere. He's already gone to Colorado. Now he's going to Georgia this weekend, which was kind of breaking news today. Would be a big time flip and decommitment. There's some bad juju out there.
Very bad.
There's some
They're 4-5.
And and not to mention they're not winning as they expected to be winning, losing to teams like Minnesota. Anyway, that's where we start here. Is like if you're looking at, you've got actually two teams that kind of have some bad juju. We're coming off a loss to UCLA. We're coming off 3 straight losses, but the worst offender being that UCLA loss. They are coming off of that loss to Washington as well. They're sitting at 4-5. They're staring down a strong possibility of not making a bowl game. We're staring down a possibility of not making that bowl game. Like the vibes are in the gutter for both right now, and this is a chance to bring yourself up off the mat. When you look at like who's had any sort of like what I would say positive, just like intangible momentum this week, you gotta say there's probably a little bit of optimism and hope and excitement on that offensive side of the ball for us. For them, they're changing starting quarterbacks. All of a sudden, their quarterback is not only being benched, he's just like left the program entirely.
Quit.
Well, I love that. Love that. Problem for us, Jaden Maeva is actually pretty good.
Yeah, which stinks.
It is unfortunate news that I have found out. People think that he's a running quarterback. I would not describe him as that. I would just say that he is a more mobile version of Miller Moss, which like he could hurt us on the ground. He did run at UNLV, but he was not like a designed runner. Like if you look at how many rushes that he had, it was generally around like 5 or less per game. Passing, he's pretty solid. He was right in the mid 60s completion percentage there. The thing that like is noticeable is he kind of improved as the year went on there, been getting better and better as it went on. But his team did lose the last 3 games of the year for whatever that's worth. I'm a little bit worried about putting in like a mobile version of Miller Moss. We haven't like totally faced that this year. I know Will Howard can scoot a little bit, Shadur can escape a little bit, and we seemed to contain them, which was like reassuring, I guess. On the other hand, like it's been a bit of an Achilles heel in the past. They're pretty well balanced, but they have a top 15 passing offense, and it's all going to go through Maeva. My only hope is that he is just like jitter mania and dropping the ball and sweating profusely and cannot handle our D-line pressure. That's like got to be the focus here.
Yeah, and speaking of vibes, so I went and listened to 2.5, like almost 3 USC podcasts this week just to see what the vibes were. They're very, very low. They're not in full panic mode with Lincoln Riley, but they're pretty close to like what's going on. And they're hammering him for Grinch last year. They basically are saying he holds on to guys way too long. So he held on to the D coordinator for all of last season, despite the poor performance. Finally canned him, and then he hung on to Miller Moss for 9 games, at least according to these guys. And maybe this is revisionist history, but Miller Moss, who played really well, he put up pretty good numbers, but he does have the propensity for backbreaking turnovers towards the end of the game. And that's where he lost to Penn State and Maryland. They're coming off, they've lost 4 of their last 5. They had a really commanding win over Wisconsin, which I unfortunately watched because I was like, oh, this USC is extremely good. But then they lost to Minnesota on a backbreaking, by a touchdown on a tough interception by Miller Moss. Penn State, they lost in overtime. Maryland, they lost by 1. They beat Rutgers, and then they lost to Washington. So they're struggling. They're trying to find it. They think he's going to be able to do it. But the question you always have is like, why hasn't this guy played a single snap all season? If he's truly, all of a sudden you listen to these SEC or USC fans, and not the podcast guys, but the USC fans are like, oh, he's, the next coming of Jaden Daniels, and he's going to be so mobile, he's going to be awesome. I was like, well, he's this awesome, why didn't he play ever? That to me is the only hope. And like in our Twitter mentions, we were just getting massacred. People were like, anytime a backup quarterback comes in, we turn them into Heisman contenders, which we're very, very good at. But that's the only thing is like he put up good numbers at USC. He's a very good quarterback. Lincoln Riley is still a very good coach. But you just got to wonder, like, I don't know.
I mean, he's like the quarterback whisperer. Like everybody he coaches seems to win a Heisman, except for Miller Moss.
Except for Miller Moss, who just quit the team.
Or just quit the team and quit USC. The other thing that is a little bit bothersome is how our secondary matches up against them.
Not great.
I was looking back at 247 has like their composite roster and stuff. The top 4 ranked players on their team, at least out of high school: Zachariah Branch, wide receiver, 5-star; Deuce Robinson, 5-star, wide receiver; Kyle Ford, wide receiver, 5-star; Makai Lemon, 5-star, wide receiver.
There you go. Yeah.
Or
what's weird about though is,
and Malcolm Hartzog is going to trot out there, and all 3 of him is going to just get dunked on. So I think they're going to put up some points.
The weird thing about them though, and this is because I watched, let's see which game. I watched one of the games that Zachariah Branch like completely took the game over. Maybe it was Michigan. But they don't give him the ball enough. Like, he's unbelievable. He's electric. Yeah. He's incredible. This is USC. But he gets 4 to 6 touches a game. And it's kind of similar to the Ohio State thing where they just didn't give Jeremiah Smith the ball, where you're like, if you give Branch 10, 15 touches against us, they're going to have 19 touchdowns. But if he gets 4, I don't know. It's like, that sounds good to me. He just seems very underutilized.
This is also a good chance for Sierra Wright to go back home and
there you go.
Go his stuff here a little bit. Be like, this is what happens when I play in a good defense. Going back to his former school, but the interesting thing about their reception totals on the year as well. So they spread the ball around, at least in the Miller Moss era. They were spreading the ball around very well. So it'll be interesting to see if Maeva takes the same approach. But like Makai, so they're leading receivers by reception. So Branch has 35 receptions, Makai Lemon has 33, Jacoby Lane has 32. I mean, they're all right there. What's really interesting is their running back, Woody Marks, leads their team in receptions at 37. So all of them get 4.1 receptions per game or less, which is interesting. Like, a lot of the time you see just like that alpha dog, that guy that is going to just completely clean up, and then everybody else falls in place after him. But
yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting. Like, I guess you just hope. Again, this is where coaching comes in. And what did Maryland do to shut these guys down? What did Minnesota do to shut these guys down? What did and like. This is what everybody has done so well against us, is very clearly they watched the Illinois film and they figured out how Illinois was able to carve us up. They figured out how Indiana was able, like, and it's for us, it's that intermediate passing game. They know where the holes are in the defense. Now they figured out how to cover against Raiola. They figured out his weaknesses there. But like, for us, it's like, God, what did Maryland do? Maryland is not a good football team, and they went in and beat them, right? But what did Washington do? And like, just do as much as you can to like mimic that, because USC is not lighting up the scorebook. They did. I mean, I watched the Wisconsin game. They crushed Wisconsin, and then I also watched them. They blew the Penn State game. They're beating Penn State pretty good, and then they blew a lead. So they're known for they're known for second quarter or second half meltdowns. But you just you're just like, can we take advantage one time? The other thing I'll say too is just listening to these podcasts. This is on the depressing side. This is a positive vibes only podcast, but there isn't a lot of respect for Nebraska, and we got to go out and earn it. Mm-hmm. But man, they truly were like, this is a perfect game to start. To start Jaden. It's a nice tune-up game. They're going to play UCLA next, which is their crosstown rival, obviously, and then Notre Dame to finish the year. And these guys are literally like, yeah, good. This is good. Like, we're catching Nebraska team. They don't really have, talent. They don't seem to have like a wide receiver that jumps off the page. And Dylan Raiola is struggling, and they just lost to UCLA. And it seems like they're really struggling. It's very depressing. Like, here's someone objectively looking at Nebraska, and they just don't even like think about us, as much as we think about it 24/7, 365. It's like, God, we really got to like figure out how to earn this thing.
Yeah, they what's interesting about how their offense clicks too is like I'm trying to find, the advantages here for us. And our their O-line has been a little bit of a struggle. Like, it's improved from last year. It was a huge problem when Williams was running for his life. But he was able to do that. They've gotten a little bit better, but I think our D-line can abuse them a little bit. The other thing is they're decent at running the ball, but they're not like they certainly don't blow you away. Like in a couple of their losses, they basically got completely shut down. Washington, they ran for 166. Rutgers, here's a shocking stat. They only ran for 135 on Rutgers, but with 4 touchdowns. Maryland, they only ran for 81 yards. Penn State was very surprisingly, they ran for 189. Minnesota, they ran for 173. So like they're rarely, if ever, eclipsing the two. They've only gone over 200 one time this year. Against LSU, when they won, they only ran for 69 yards. So they're going to want to get their yards through the air.
Yeah.
But
you have no idea.
Can we hold them? Like, yeah, I mean, our rushing defense is probably like the strong suit of our defense. Like, we've given up less than 1,000 rushing yards on the year through 9 games. So, I mean, that's our strong suit. I think that I like where we would be at there. It's just a matter of if our secondary can keep up with their stable of horses and then a mobile quarterback.
All right, I want to hit you with, well, I guess that's USA stuff, but I want to mix in some of our. Do you have any more UFC talk? I want to talk. Let's do some underdog.
Okay,
I'm in. Some underdog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Get back to this thing real quick. Hang on. So I'll make these up because we don't have them yet. But for those still listening, we got about 1,500 folks that are hanging. Appreciate you guys listening. As always, we've got a Underdog Fantasy promo code HUSGuys, 50% match up to $1,000. So we've been doing this last 4 or 5 weeks. It typically comes in for Raiola higher or lower than 220 passing yards. We don't have the official line yet, but assuming he plays, higher or lower than 220 passing yards.
Okay. They're averaging giving up like, I have to look it up. I would say my inclination is probably still lower. He's just been in such a slump. It's like so hard to see it going otherwise. I'm just looking now, though.
Unless he gets the Holgorsen bump and he just blows it out of the water and he throws for like 330 yards. Haven't thought about that yet, have you?
Good point. It's a good point. Oh, God, no, I'm looking. Yeah, he's going over, baby. I'm back in.
Why? Because they gave up a lot.
Their defense, I forgot. So their defense in the first month of the season was actually doing pretty well against the pass. Like against LSU, they gave up 300. They gave up like 304 yards, and everyone was like, "Oh God, this new D coordinator, he stinks. It's the same old." But they won the game, so it was like forgivable. They then gave up 103 pass yards to Utah State. They gave up 32 pass yards against Michigan, only 180 against Wisconsin, 169 against Minnesota. But then the wheels fell off in the last month. 400 passing yards against Penn State, 373 against Maryland, 313 against Rutgers, AK-47, and then 260 against Washington.
Polish rifle.
They also, another one that I looked up, guess who has the highest completion percentage allowed against them on the season in the Big Ten?
I mean,
we're talking
USC.
about him, so it's USC.
Hopefully USC.
It's not us. Yeah, it's around 67%, I believe, on the year. So you love to hear that. You love to hear that maybe Rayola starts hitting some easier passes. Yeah, hit me with the over on 220.
Okay, I take the over. I just take the overs on all these. But other one that usually pops up, it's usually right around here. Dowdell at 40 rushing yards, which is so pathetic that we're talking about that. But that's been the line the last 5 weeks. Will he have higher or lower than 40 rushing yards?
Man, it really has been. All right, well, what would you say?
I mean, I'd like to will him through to 40. But it is crazy. I mean, so when you look at I've got his game log right here. He's got 60 the last two, which is somehow unbelievable that he got 60 yards. He has not had 100 yet this season, obviously. 60, but then Indiana he had 16, Rutgers he had 57, Purdue 21, Illinois 72. So he sits in that like 50 to 70 range.
Yeah.
So I would say 40 is a nice low number to be over. If it was an over-under at 60, I'd probably say lower. So I'll bet you he's in that 50 to 60 range. He just doesn't break them. That's kind of like my thing with him is he like runs the contact and he just would rather like bull somebody over and he never really breaks a tackle. Like he break one tackle.
He's a bull in a china shop. He just like knocks whatever is in his way.
Yeah. So that's my
I've been looking at like the best rushing offenses that they've played. So they've got, Minnesota on there, Penn State, Michigan, LSU, Rutgers is on there too. Those offenses in particular, LSU ran for 117 on them. Michigan went for 290 on them, which is insane. Wisconsin, they're not a terrific rushing team this year, but they're serviceable. 106. Minnesota 193. Penn State 118. And then Rutgers 121. So everybody's going for just over 100 on them if you've got a semblance of a rushing offense. But that is kind of the collective yards. I would say, yeah, I think he's going to end up right around 50. So I'd go overs on 40, probably unders on 60s.
Okay. Next one, Nayor. This is a tricky one too. We'll set it at probably be around 40 again. That's where it was last week. It was like right at 40 for UCLA. Higher or lower than 40 pass or receiving yards for Isaiah Nayor?
Over, just because if I'm parlaying it and Rayola's 220 is going to hit, then Nayor's 40 is going to hit. Like he's our best. He's our best, like probably our most like athletically gifted receiver, other than maybe Lloyd. So if we kind of go as he goes, and you kind of saw that last game too, like we started finally hitting, just a couple of passes to Nayor to open up our passing offense in like the second half there.
Yeah, he'll be interesting.
Over on 40, but probably not by much.
He's interesting because it's probably been the most surprising. So he had 106 catches, 121 yards in that first game against UTEP. Turns out UTEP is the worst team in college football, so we didn't probably know that at the time. But that first game, he goes 6 catches, 120 yards, 20 yards a catch and a touchdown. That gorgeous 59-yard touchdown catch. I was like, this guy's going to win the Heisman. I thought he was incredible. Backs it up, and you figure like he backed that up, and he's gone then 31 yards against Colorado, then 35, then 90 against Illinois, but then he just disappeared. Purdue, Indiana, Ohio State, he had 14, 13, and 15. Just completely disappeared from the offense, and then finally had 89 last week against UCLA. So, he's had 3 games of 90 plus. He's got 3 games of under 20. So that 40 kind of sits you like right in the middle, that you're like, it's almost like the games that he plays well, you've got a much better shot, and you'd like to, get the kid the ball. He fits into that category too for Holgorsen. You're like, if you show up and you're like, wait, you got this kid who's, he can put up 120 yards a game. Like, why are we not throwing to him? Like, why are we not drawing up specific concepts to get him the ball?
USC gave up 11 receptions, 131 yards to Dymere Miller, who's a receiver for Rutgers. As we saw against Rutgers, he put up 7 points on us. Not exactly a passing threat. So I like to hear about games like that, like, one of the alpha dogs can sort of take over a little bit there.
All right, last one. We'll do Barney. Barney, all-purpose yards. Let's make this one tough. I'll put it at 80 all-purpose yards for Ja'Cory Barney.
Oh, man. 80's high. But, God, what would just really get the juices flowing is just, like, some sort of, like bets like 80-yard run from Barney. Just give me that one, because he's the most electric playmaker we probably have. I mean, I would put Nayor as like the best true receiver right now, and Banks, the most sure-handed. But like Barney is your biggest threat, probably to like just break one at any moment. It'll be really interesting to see what Holgorsen does. My answer on 80 would be under. On 60-ish would be over.
Right in that 60 range. Yeah, for as much as we get him the ball, it's just like, yeah, he needs more. He needs more carries receiving. Like, I totally agree with Satterfield's initiative to get him the ball. But, yeah, the big play hasn't been there all season. I mean, Jalen Lloyd has completely disappeared from the offense. The deep threat for Barney has disappeared. Like, Malachi Coleman's obviously redshirting this year. But,
just pause there, though. Would be a great weapon to be using these last 3 games. Right?
Well, and that's also where, like, I wonder if Holgorsen shows up and is like, who's that kid over there? Like, why is you got a kid that runs a 4.240 who's 6'5"? Like, he's redshirting. Like, can we get him out there? Like, can we throw it? He's like, hey, I watched your offense. I watched your game film from last year. Jalen Lloyd caught 5 passes and he gained 80 yards on every single pass. Maybe we should throw to him. Like, what are we doing?
We're going to air. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, if we're going to air raid it, you have to factor in people like you're too deep, because all of a sudden you're going, 4 and 5 wide. Like,
well, not to mention you have this quarterback whose entire thing, the entire recruiting class was like, this kid can throw the ball 70 yards in the air. And then we're just like, and we're just going to throw like dink and ducks to like Ja'Cory Barney the entire time. Like, he can throw the ball 70 yards in the air, and we have not seen it once all season. Just like, let it rip. Like, just let him just unleash one. So that's where, like, I mean, so Barney had 78 yards last game. Or no, he had 86 total, including a rushing yards. He had 49 to game 4. He had 40. So he sits around 40 to 90 against Purdue. He had a pretty good rushing game. But, yeah, he kind of sits in that 40 to 60 range. So 80 is probably high. Probably, I mean, if he falls in line with where he's at, 60. But literally, if he breaks 1, that's where all these, like, higher and lower numbers are so tricky, because you're just like, 40 for Dowdell is 1 rush. Literally just break 1 tackle. Break 1 tackle, and you get 40, and, like, each of these ones – yeah, you're just like, can we just break 1 tackle? Can we make 1 catch, make 1 play? Like 220 yards for an over, for a higher lower for, for Ale is not that high. So, I don't know. That'd be interesting.
I think I'm hoping to see from the get-go the Holgorsen effect start to take hold. Like, I normally try and just in my head break the games down like unit by unit. And so we'll go rapid fire here. Our O-line versus their D-line. Who wins?
Our low line's struggling so much. Rapid fire. Their D-line.
Okay. Our receivers versus their secondary, who's allowing the highest completion percentage in the conference.
Yeah, our receivers.
Okay. Our quarterback versus their quarterback.
Our quarterback.
Love that. Yeah. Our D-line versus their O-line.
No, our D-line. Yeah, what am I thinking? Absolutely our D-line.
I think our D-line as well. And then our secondary versus their receivers.
Yeah, our secondary.
I think their receivers win that one. I think their receivers have a horse race.
Are you kidding me? You don't think the one-legged Tommy Hill with like no feet can?
Yeah, the plantar fasciitis, just like
plantar fasciitis, and like guys who are getting torched. The guys getting torched by UCLA can't shut down 5 stars. Why?
And then our secondary or our special teams versus their special teams. Here's a fun fact for you as to that one.
their special teams.
They are. Hang on. They are, I believe, 10 for 15 on field goals this year.
No way.
So this could be.
We are 10 for 15.
I am correct. They are 10 for 15 on field goals this year.
Really?
They're 67% on field goals. They stink at kicking field goals.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. So do we.
So yeah,
and we missed. I think we missed an extra point
us.
last week, which is fun. I'm sure that missed extra point won't haunt him for this week.
The point is, I think that we're both seeing that like it's going to be a struggle for both teams to run the ball. It's going to basically come down to quarterback play. The receivers are probably going to have their way with our secondary, but if our D-line can get to them, I see advantage our defense. Our offense versus them, it then like they're probably going to negate our running game pretty well.
Yeah.
I think that some really good rushing teams like Michigan have gone for 300 yards on them, but nobody else has gotten close to that. I think that our entire game then comes down to the Holgorsen effect. Like if we can hold them in check enough, like we think that we can, like we have against some good passing defenses, and give them the ball again, and let's see if we can get this offense back on track. We could sneak one out here.
I think this is. I mean, I hopefully
9.5 line for USC. Where are you at?
I mean, the hyped up after an hour's worth of podcasting, I'm like, I think we can win this. The dark side of like, because even in my head as I play this out, I'm like, I'm looking at all their scores. I'm looking at their second halves. Like they're a second half meltdown team. But unfortunately, so are we. It's like this is going to be the battle of just like who wants it less or who wants it more. Like I don't even know which one's going to be. Like who's going to melt down less. I mean, I'm going to get crushed for this, but I realistically think we've got a very good chance to win. Will we seize it? We haven't in 10 years, but it's there. It's there. I guess if you look at it like if you take a big step back from this whole thing and you come into this game, like you go into all off season, we were chalking this up as a loss, right? This was like, it was Ohio State, USC got it. They're preseason top 10. Right. They've got electric wide. They have the best 5-star wide receivers. They've one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and they have Lincoln Riley. He's going to make a jump. They're going to be 10-2. They're going to be competing for the Big Ten title. To walk into this game with them 4-5, having lost 4 of the last 5, and just cut their quarterback. Yeah. It's like it's a dream situation. It's the best possible scenario. Yeah. Are we? We're still 9-point dogs. They're still
got in trouble for cheating this week.
Got in trouble for cheating. But all of those things of like they're still USC. It's still Lincoln Riley. He's still a quarterback guru. He's still an offensive genius. All of those things are still true. But I fully expected them to be 9-2. Or 9 and whatever. Like right now, I expected them to be 7-2, and instead of their 4-5, and they're licking their wounds and they're really struggling. And hopefully they've quit because they still have Notre Dame, UCLA, Nebraska. Like they're staring down a non-bowl game season, even worse than we are. Like they're not going to be Notre Dame. They may not be UCLA. So I hope they're facing the pressure, and all of that stuff adds up to like, all right, like obviously we're all broken because we just lost to UCLA, but it's there. It's there.
Yeah, you just wonder if there is just enough in our favor. They're also like I said, red. They're the 69th most penalized. Other way around. They have 434 yards of penalties on 55 flags. That puts them at 69th in the country. Like things like that. It's like, can this be one of those, like they start shooting themselves in the foot? They're giving up on the season. Their mojo is gone. Their quarterback's gone. They're like, does enough of those intangible things happen? Can the Nebraska away fans start making a little noise, getting a little rowdy, getting in their ear, making them? I mean, like LA people, they don't give a shit about football.
They don't care. They're 4-5. It's going to be a half-empty stadium. There's going to be no one there. It's going to be a total
Nebraska fans. You just want enough of those things to tilt in your favor that you can keep it close.
Yeah.
A lot of these numbers, I will be straight honest, a lot of these numbers are saying, USC by 9.5, that should hit. but there's just enough of those like kind of external factors going on that like I think this can end up being a one possession game. Ultimately, I think that our record in one possession games says this is another heartbreaker, but the optimistic side of me says there's enough change in the air that maybe something's different this time around.
Yeah.
Maybe Holgorsen calls a little bit of a better game, just enough. Enough.
I mean, if you don't have hope, you got nothing, right? And that's like that's the last thing to go. It's just good to go 5-1 to 5-7 will be like that'll be it. That'll be something that this fan base has a very hard time recovering for. And so you got
will be in free fall until next August.
I mean, we need something. This is the Kool-Aid podcast. Like you got to throw us. It's not gonna take much to think about how low the bar is. You win one of these next three. That's it.
One.
And you got to win. Like, I mean, God forbid you win all three and send us into a frenzy, but like win one. And I think that's what's probably the hardest thing for fans right now is the fact that like we're 3-18 in the last 21 games in November. We lost all 4 last year. He's staring down the barrel of like that again. It's like every other team seems to get better. UCLA has gotten better. Iowa is known for being, we're 3-18 in 21 games in the last like 5 or 6 years, and Iowa's like 19-1 or something. Like they just don't lose in November. And like the difference of getting better in November versus what we do, just like free fall and like stink. It's like if you just get a little bit better, and you got Holgorsen going into the offseason, and Rayola comes back, and you got and you re-gun a little bit, like it's gonna be the greatest offseason of all time. But you cannot limp into the offseason with 6 straight losses. It cannot happen.
No,
it can't.
Bless America. Jesus.
It can't. God. So it's not going to. That's why we got to will it. We got to will it. We got to will it. Right. It's going to happen.
Right. Dawson Merritt. That's the final big off-season not off-season, bye-week mojo that we've got going on. He's been one of our biggest recruits that we've been trying to flip the entire year. He's committed to Alabama. He just got a crystal ball to Nebraska today. I love it. Things are trending in the right direction. Imagine little Dawson Merritt, Christian Jones. That is a linebacking core of the future. Things are looking up.
I mean, it truly though, like
you get Holgo in here, and you start.
If you get Holgo and you just show like a little bit of a sign of life.
Say, I want to be a part of that. I want that.
Show Rayola throwing a couple deep balls, Jalen Lloyd, a couple big pat. Like you just need a little bit of something because literally right now there's nothing. You gotta give them some. You gotta give us something to get the recruiting hype going. Like. If you give us something, we will be top 10 next season.
We can't get worse. We will get better this year. It won't be as much as I'm expecting for 2025 when he's got a whole off season.
But I'm saying, like, think about how this plays out going into next year.
We'll take
you win one of these games, you're 6-6 or 7-5. That'd be unbelievable. 7-5 is like I just can't even dream of 7-5. But you win those games. You got Holgorsen is signed on as the official offensive coordinator. Satterfield's gone. You come into next year. Like we will be preseason hype top 15. We will make sure of that. But if we go 5-7, because then you have the rule 3rd-year bump thing that everybody's obsessed with that haven't quite seen yet. We're going to see it at some point. But that'll come, right? It's going to happen. But like if you lose 6 straight freaking games, you can now lose 6 straight games. Good grief. Hey. All right, positive vibes. I think we're going to win. But, this is just me talking myself into, just getting my soul ripped out. But, hey, got to have a little optimism. Run the ball. Holgorsen's back. We're going to finish on – here he is. There he is. Save us. Save us, Dana.
Best hair. He has the best hair in the game. That's
Dana's going to save us. He's in there. He's a beast. He's going to make it happen.
It's going to be great.
All right, folks. Husker Power. Go Big Red. Keep supporting the boys. They're going to turn this thing around. And go Big Red. Thanks for listening. Check out HuskGuysStore.com. Check out pipeline-jerky.com. And head out to Underdog Fantasy and use HuskGuys promo code HuskGuys for 50% off your first deposit. Go Big Red as always.
I have to throw that out.
Got to turn this thing around. All right, boys.